This is Matt Binder. Energy was the issue at hand in a recent forum held at the West Hawaii Civic Center. Kona State Representative Nicole Lowen organized the June 24th meeting. The talk story featured guest panelists Jay Ignacio, president of Island Utility HELCO, and Andrea Gill with the State Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. The moderated discussion produced some informative dialogue on Hawaii's energy future.
It's a little more. I think people expected decoupling would help to reduce rates, but it's hard. And I know that you gave your presentation where, you know, with the avoided cost issue, that it would be higher if it hadn't been, the contract hadn't been renegotiated, and we are seeing savings, but there's still, because I'm sort of out there talking to people every day, I think there's still a lot of unhappiness with the cost because it's really difficult for our residents.
The driver for the price of electricity on this island is the cost of fuel. And you saw the charts that Andrea put on, Andy put on, the close correlation for electricity prices with fuel prices. And the reason being is about 2/3 of your energy bill, your electric energy bill, is related to the cost of fuel and purchase power. Put up this chart and I show that 43% of your energy is from renewable resources. So the question that is in people's mind is, well, if it's from renewable resources, why do you have a strong link to the price of oil? Because oil has nothing to do with wind energy, oil has nothing to do with geothermal energy. The reason is that we have entered into contracts with independent power producers, renewable energy independent power producers, that have their pricing mechanism linked to the price of oil. And Andy referred to it as avoided cost. And one of the things we have done is going forward is all new contracts do not have a link to oil pricing. And one of the more recent contracts is the additional 8 megawatts of energy from geothermal. That is not linked to the price of oil. In fact, in tough negotiations with PGV, we were able to have PGV actually work with us and incorporate 5 megawatts from the 30 megawatts that they're already being paid linked to oil, and they were willing to negotiate us and actually de-link some of that from pricing of oil. Going forward, this stack chart, you can see like the steam units, Keohole, those units use oil. Even the independent power producer, Hamakua Energy Partners, they use oil. So we still have that link to oil pricing. So one of our strategies is to bring in a lower cost fuel. So we're working to get liquid natural gas, which we can get at a lower cost than diesel or the industrial fuel oil that we use. So one of our strategies is to acquire that. We've recently done a request for proposal to bring liquid natural gas in containers. And we've issued the RFP and now we're evaluating the bids, but the process looks promising. The timeline we're looking at, and you know, we all wish it was sooner, but the time we're looking at is the 2017 timeframe to get LNG into the state. And we would be one of the users for liquid natural gas on this island. So if we can get a successful contract with an LNG provider, that is one of the strategies. If you look at this stack chart, we put certain units down on the bottom. And in order to manage the electric grid, there are certain units that provide what we call grid services to keep the grid stable. And some of them are the steam units, part of the geothermal power plant also has those grid services, the additional 8 megawatts that we incorporated. Keohole, they have these grid services, but they're linked to oil or they're linked to fossil fuels. Even in the future, they're going to be linked to liquid natural gas. So one of our strategies is to replace those units with more renewable units that have those grid services. And that's why we went out with a request for proposal for geothermal energy. We put out a request for proposal for 50 megawatts of additional geothermal energy. The thinking is you displace those steam units and possibly the diesel units. So that's another part of the strategy that we're doing.
And you didn't really address the part of the question that asked about decoupling and why did that not sort of function as people thought it would. But there is a lot of talk, and I have a couple questions here, I'm not reading them word for word, but about sort of separating the electricity generation from the electricity distribution. And there's a lot of talk too about this sort of potential that in the future, because there's so much distributed generation, so many people are producing electricity on their rooftops, or just smaller projects by independent power producers. So there's talk that the utility might transition, instead of being a power generator, into a service provider that provides the grid that helps us distribute this energy, and that just being a service provider would be, this is just an example of one possible future.
Let's talk about the decoupling topic that was brought up. Representative Lowen said decoupling is decoupling generation from transmission and distribution. That may be one thought of decoupling, but in our arena, decoupling, what it is decoupling the revenue stream from the amount of kilowatt hours that the utility sells. In the past, as there's economic growth and the utility has more electric sales, the utility has an opportunity to make more profit and cover more expense. It also has the effect of, if the utility has less sales, then you have less revenue to cover your expense and you have less utility profits. So in order to have the utility fully embrace self-generation and fully embrace energy efficiency, part of the Hawaii Clean Energy Agreement was to have a decoupling mechanism as part of our regulatory construct, meaning our profit base is not linked to sales. And you can see it in this chart. If you look at the bold line on the top and you look at the middle of the day, you will see that line is going in a downward fashion. You also see a dashed line above that. That dashed line represents what the kilowatt hour usage, or essentially the sales that the utility would have if it not for photovoltaics. And the area between those two curves would essentially be called the lost sales. And without decoupling, that lost revenue would have to be covered by the utility owners. But with the decoupling mechanism, what happens is you actually share that across all users of electricity. That's what the decoupling is. So the decoupling is successful in having the utility embrace self-generation, as in this case, and also energy efficiency. Earlier I said the peak usage for the year was 180 megawatts. Since going into the Hawaii Clean Energy Agreement, through energy efficiency, the peak usage used to be 200 megawatts. So it's actually much lower now than it was in the past. So from that respect, decoupling has been successful in promoting energy efficiency. So that's how decoupling was used to work and motivate the utility to embrace certain regulatory desires. The other part of the question is, are we open to different models? I think we are, and part of a filing that we'll be doing in August with the Public Utilities Commission is to explore different options, regulatory model options. So we're working on that now, and we'll be filing something in the August timeframe.
We will have more from this forum this week on the newscast. For Big Island Video News, this is Matt Binder.